So yeah, I'm Reed Munro. I'm from Cancel. I'm a project manager with them. Just to let you know where I'm coming from, I've got about 17 years, maybe 18 years of experience within the industry. 10 exclusively with BIM. I've worn many hats. I like the fact that I've been at a lot of different places, from developers to Subtrades, and so it gives me a bit of an insight on what everybody is looking for from BIM. So specifically now I've been working more on the construction side. It's the side that kind of intrigues me a little bit more. So one of the things that I've been noticing is I wanted to talk about what's happening in the subtrade side of things. And I kind of say this a bit tongue-in-cheek, but you know, when you remove the collaborative process of IPD and you bolt on BIM to standard contractual frameworks, what do you get? So for me, it's basically construction modeling. You know, everybody knows that it goes hand in hand with IPD, but what happens when there's no collaborative approach, but there's still BIM being asked? And what happens when clients start asking you about, you know, how much does it cost to do this BIM? You know, so we all know that BIM isn't supposed to cost money; it's supposed to save us money, right? But in reality, from what I've been seeing, it's costing money. It's being treated a little bit differently. So I just wanted to take some time today and discuss a couple of the trends that I've seen in the subtrades and the construction industry about how BIM is being utilized, mostly specifically in Western Canada. So more and more subtrades are being asked to provide construction models within their scope. You're seeing a lot of this stuff in specifications. Yeah, some of it's really good, some of it's really gray. The important thing to remember here is that BIM can be provided at a cost and still provide value to the project. And so you have to keep an open mind in that. It's tough to make the ROI on this, but it can be done, and you can look at it, and it does still progress BIM and your company in the right direction. So subtrades have been coming to me or other people within the industry, and we've been talking about, you know, different ways of how to deal with this, and there's lots of different ways to deal with this request from their clients. So what I wanted to do today is kind of bring up a couple of subtrades that are dealing with this environment right now in the projects that they're dealing with, and most of them are still ongoing as well. Just to talk about, you know, how they saw it unfolding for them. And I think it's a valid perspective that everybody needs to hear. So there's lots of different types of contractual frameworks for this to happen. You know, whether it's IPD, you know, design builds, construction management, all those are valid ways of producing projects, but they can really kind of be boiled down to two different scenarios. Are they collaborative, or are they a silo? And so a couple of the traits of these that you'll see in these projects, and you'll be able to pick them out right away when you start asking some questions or looking through documents. But in a collaborative environment, it's a team-built BIM plan. You know, everybody is on board, from, you know, the designers to the subtrades, the key players that are there that are putting together the BIM plan to understand how it's going to be produced. The models are freely shared, and everybody is welcome to that data. And most importantly, that data is not signed under a disclosure. Okay? So the design process will now then also become a collaborative process, and regular coordination meetings with the key people there is a good sign that things are going in the right way. And equally shared risk amongst everybody. So those to me are the collaborative way of how to produce a project. And I'm not saying that these are right or wrong, I'm just saying, you know, what's happening and what's not happening. So in a siloed project, there's typically a standard BIM plan that may come from another project. It may be a template from somewhere else. Not as much thought has gone into that. Models are shared by signing contractual agreements, disclaimers. You're more than welcome to that information, but we want to make sure that, you know, when it comes down to it, we're not liable for that model, so to speak. There's an independent design process, so all the consultants are typically working in their own environment, designing. They might be working with each other, but construction's not involved. Regular BIM coordination meetings with missing key members, so meetings where where decisions come up that we need to fix something and the person that's making the decision isn't there. And all the risk is managed per scope. So just to kind of break those out into two different ways. So a lot of the subtrades that I've been dealing with, they work in the siloed process, and some of the things that they're starting to ask and trying to wonder about and really open up their eyes is, are you contractually obligated to even provide a model? Sometimes they just stipulate in the contractual documents that, yeah, you have to do some 3D coordination with a 3D model, but it doesn't really go into much more than that. Is there a clearly defined BIM plan? You've heard people talk about this for the last 5 years. Everybody understands that there needs to be a plan, but there's very little good plans that are happening out there. Does your business even have the ability to provide BIM? It's something that they need to think about for sure, obviously. What are the goals and the activities in this plan or this project that you're bidding? Is there a budget for coordination modeling, or is it simply just pointing out errors through the coordination process to generate RFIs, or is it, you know, a situation where you get paid to change that model and move forward? So how do you deliver to the changes to the field? And that's a big one. A lot of people, it's a tough thing. Everybody still is using paper pretty much. I mean, there is a lot of tablets coming around. You're starting to see, you know, workstations that are dedicated to BIM models, things like that. But it's something to take into consideration. So dealing with the demand. So there's a couple, typically, I'm sure there's more than this, but what I've been seeing is there's 4 different ways of dealing with it. You've got a project, it's got a BIM scope in it, what do you do next? So, okay, the first thing we want to do is we want to hire a BIM person. Maybe not. Maybe we can. Maybe that's a decision, we're not too sure. You can get a supported implementation. You can implement BIM within your company. Have somebody help you to do that implementation, to learn from their mistakes is always a good approach. You can take that and subcontract it out to somebody else that wants to do it. And the other one is that I see a lot of is people that are just pretending that it's going to go away. And I think that's important to understand that it's not like people said before where it's a fad, it's going to go away, it's here to stay, right? So what's the right approach? Well, there is no right approach. It's what works for you as BIM as a business, right? So we want to make sure that if you guys can turn around and yeah, there's a cost associated with it, but can we see a benefit in the project for doing that? So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of look at 2 different projects here, and we're going to kind of discern, or we'll just look at how they've approached them, and we'll have a couple of people talk about them. So this first project is called Sage Hale. It's a retirement residence, all seniors care. I believe it was in Calgary. So basically the scope here was to provide a mechanical model of their scope, or at least for this individual. They wanted the project to be able to perform interference checks. They wanted to do coordination. They wanted to reduce errors. And most importantly, I thought was quite interesting was that they were doing this mostly to get subtrades on board to understand, to get their feet wet. So they weren't picking really complicated projects to do this on. They were just picking a project to have somebody to get their feet wet because they knew that and saw the value in it. And so that happened to be the case. So the business decision for these, this subtrade, this mechanical subtrade, which was PML, Petrin Mechanical, which is based out of here in Calgary, they decided that they wanted to implement it within the company, and so they approached a consultant to use to help them implement that within their company. They decided that hiring a BIM person wasn't an option for them, and staff were educated and trained, and the final stages were implemented on a pilot project. So just some quick little shots of this, just so you can get an idea of the scope of the project. It's a fairly simple build. It's wood frame, steel. There's some steel frame in there as well, but it's a retirement residence. There's not a fair amount of mechanical, but there's definitely pinch points in there that needed to be modeled out and understood how it was going to go together. And so just some higher density areas within that model, and some interference checks that were performed. So Jared couldn't be here to talk about the Sage Hill project, so I basically just shot a little video of him, and I'd just like to show you guys that. And it's just his perspective of what's happening within the BIM industry. And I'll just play that right now for you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jared Petrin, and I am part owner of Petrin Mechanical Alberta, operating out of Calgary here. Just to give you a brief history of our company, it started, I believe, in 1955, although don't quote me on that, by my grandfather up in Edmonton. And about 25 years after that, my father and my uncle, who worked for their dad for years and years, bought my grandfather out, took over operation of the company, and they've been operating ever since. Around 1993, because we were again based in Edmonton at the time, we decided that we would expand to Calgary and see how the market was, see what we could do there. And obviously, because we're still here, it worked out. It's been 22 years since my dad came down, moved his whole family, myself included. And for myself, I've been working at Petrin Mechanical since I was about 14 years old. And that means I've been in the trade for 17 years, which is hard for me to believe. And my brother and I actually have just acquired a part of Petrin Mechanical as well, so we're now partners in the business with our dad, which is a pretty incredible thing. So in this section, I'd like to talk specifically about the project that we first had experience with BIM, which I already mentioned is our Sage Hill project. With just a little bit of background, it is about 180 suite assisted living facility in the north part of Calgary. So when Petrin first looked at BIM, it was about 4 or 5 years ago. At that time, we didn't have a project that required it, and frankly, it didn't make sense to spend the capital cost attached, again, when we have no project. So through the next 4 to 5 years, though not common, Petrin did start to see an increase in projects that listed BIM as either a requirement or a criteria that would really increase your chances of winning the bid. So after we started seeing this more and more, we decided to look into it a little bit more, specifically when Sage Hill came along. And of course, we were awarded Sage Hill, and we're now under construction. So when Palmer Lowe's, the general contractor, first approached us about this and asked if we were BIM capable, of course we told them, no, we're not, but we're willing to get on board. We're willing to do whatever it takes to get the job. And we had some interest in BIM in the past, and this was a good opportunity to kind of jump on the BIM bandwagon. And it also let us kind of not hide, but spend some of that capital cost and attach it to the project rather than just coming out of our bottom line. So when Petrin was awarded the Sage Hill project, the dilemma here was that through maybe no fault of their own, it was quite late in the process that we were awarded the job. And they were actually already on site digging foundations, that type of work. And so we had to be actually on site like the next week after we were awarded the job with material, with bobcats, with backhoes, with manpower, all that stuff. We needed to get on site like literally within a week of award and get going on the job. So the downside to that was that we basically did all the underground scope with no BIM whatsoever, because there was simply not time. There was no way we were going to be able to model it in just a few days while also getting everything else ready. So knowing that was fine. Everything actually went well. We only had one mistake through all the various pipes that come out of the ground, which frankly is quite good. There's usually a couple. Anyway, moving on, knowing that BIM was required above ground, Darwin Hickson is our operations manager here, we contacted Cancel and went through the training with them, which was very informative. We learned a lot. I think it was 8 or 10 days or so. But anyway, after that training, we felt like we were at least dangerous with BIM. We had an idea of how to insert things into the model, how to insert specific equipment, how to draw piping and ductwork, things like that. Basically things that would be required for the above slab construction at the project. So originally, when Petrin first decided to implement BIM, we of course were excited about the fact that we could put this on our resume for future projects. It was something that we recognized that, as I alluded to before, we could kind of cover some of the costs for the Sage Hill project, but we also recognized that it was a great kind of a value-added service that we could, again, put in our resume when we're bidding some of these larger projects, which, as I alluded to before, we're starting to see more BIM either as a requirement or maybe a criteria, like I said, that will increase your chances. So originally, we were hoping, or thinking, I guess, maybe naively, that we would be able to spend maybe a day or two a week here or there between myself and Darwin, who I alluded to before as our operations manager. And that was all well and good for the first month or two of the project. We were able to kind of stay on top of things. But as the project progressed, we pretty quickly realized that we were not going to be able to model at the same pace that they would build. And we recognized basically that there was no chance that working 1 day a week on it, or even 2 days a week, we're going to be able to keep up. So we had a meeting. And at that meeting, we realized that we really had two options. Number one, we would have to hire someone in-house, obviously a student who's done BIM modeling training or program, whatever you want to call it, and probably pay them $50,000, $60,000 a year to do full-time modeling, because that's frankly what's required. Now, it made the decision pretty easy because this is our only BIM project, and it was fairly unrealistic to think about hiring someone outside the company just to BIM model when, again, this is our only job. It's possible that we could have picked up more, but obviously we can't take that risk. So we decided on option two, which was to look outside our company to third-party consultants. So after weighing our options, talking to a number of different consultants, we actually elected to go with Cancel because we had a history with them. They had been the ones that have given us the BIM training, and we just felt comfortable working with them. And they were able to start on it right away. Once we brought Cancel on board, things went much smoother, and frankly, we were starting to get in a little bit of trouble from the general contractor. They were a little bit frustrated with our progress on the model. Construction on site was rapidly outstripping what we were able to produce for them, and it was starting to tensions were running a little high. And once they knew that we had brought in a consultant to work with us, they were immediately receptive to the idea. They were happy that we had made the choice, and frankly, so were we. It relieved a lot of the stress in our office, and it let us focus on the things that we need to focus on. As we're project managers and estimators, we, our focus is on winning work and making sure that the projects are going on site the way they're supposed to be going, on time and on budget. BIM modeling, well, a good idea at first for us to do it in-house. Again, it was just not realistic, and we're very glad that we decided to go the route that we did. Now, don't misunderstand me. It is absolutely possible to do in-house. It was just that for Petrin Mechanical, we decided that with the limited resources of manpower that we had here, that's the route that we elected to go. So as far as the Sage Hill project actually goes, we had a good experience with the BIM overall. Despite the trials and tribulations of doing the 3D modeling in-house, which I've already talked about, overall it was a good experience for us on site. It did help us identify further up the building, because we kind of got in on the ground floor, some interferences, some coordination issues, and we were able to avoid those things before the construction was done. Which is obviously a good time saver and most importantly a money saver as well. So going forward into the future, Petrin Mechanical is absolutely interested in doing more BIM projects. We think it's the way of the future, and everyone knows technology is just growing by leaps and bounds. It's only going to get more commonplace to see these, and I've already alluded to it earlier in the presentation. We've started to see this more and more frequently in tender packages and things like that. Now, one thing that we at Petrin kind of view as a really great opportunity for growth in BIM is for the owners and the architects and the general contractors as well, and consultants too, mechanical, electrical designers. These guys need to be at the forefront. It needs to be led from top down, again, in our opinion. And I say this because we just see it as a great opportunity to kind of nip issues in the bud, for lack of a better term. And as I mentioned at our Sage Hill project, it was really too late in the project, frankly, for them to get on board with BIM. Although I said it did help and alleviate some problem areas, frankly, it could have been even better. Had we been involved months in advance, maybe even as a design assist, something like that, that's where the opportunity for BIM really has kind of room for growth. If contractors, owners, consultants, if you guys can get subcontractors on board and the engineers on board at the same time, and maybe kind of a two-headed monster, if you will, that's where the opportunity is. You have to get guys in as part of a team, kind of on the ground floor, and work it as a design build almost, or like I said before, a design assist. There's a really great opportunity there. And the problem is, if you wait until tender time, which is typically only a couple months maybe before construction starts, that's too late. Another thing that we at Petrin see as a real opportunity for growth is during the bidding process, which I was just discussing, but specifically as it relates to BIM, and having a really solid project-specific BIM execution plan. One of the issues that we ran into at Sage Hill was that it was fairly evident that it was just borrowed from another project, which is fine. They actually built a very similar project up in St. Albert in Edmonton. But again, bidding the project is extremely difficult when it's a generic kind of a BIM execution plan. If, again, general contractors, owners, consultants, I'm not sure exactly who the right person is to do it, but if those people can give a more specific execution plan, it helps everyone from pre-construction to during construction to post-construction, and it will just lower the overall cost and just make everything flow a little smoother. So at the end of the day, the overall experience that Petrin had with BIM or construction modeling was a positive one. We're excited going into the future to do more BIM projects. We do think that it is only going to get more and more extensive, more and more commonplace. And like I said, we're excited going forward to hopefully do more and more of this type of work. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something from this.
Okay, so really unique, different perspective, and it's good to hear some of the things that are coming out of Jared's mouth in regards to how these things unfolded. Like I said, it's a perspective. So I want to move on to the next one here, and this is another case study, so to speak. It's a 28-story mixed-use office tower. So the BIM requirements on this one was prefabrication, so they increased the level of detail or design, depending on how you look at it, to 400. We want to do coordination and interference checks. So from that, from that stance, the business decision was to, the BIM requirements were subcontracted out. They wanted to create accountability that way. There was a cost that was carried, and SML wanted to learn from the experience, which was a good way for them to get their feet wet in some regards on a prefabrication level. So just some quick little things about the project, just a rendering. So on the left here is the design model, and on the right is the fabrication model. So a significant amount of work that needs to go into to fabricate these elements. These are all going to be, or will be, fabricated offsite. And just a quick example of the fabrication drawings that we had. So it gives locations and elevations, key plans for the spool drawings, which calls out each of the spools, and then, of course, the example of the spool drawings. So a really high level of detail, specific areas on this project. So right now I'd like to call Neil Tao up to the stage, and he's going to talk more specifically about this project. Neil?
Hello, my name is Neil Tao. I'm part owner and office manager at Strathcona Mechanical Limited. Just a brief background on our company. We've been around since 1946. We were originally Fuller Knowles. And in 1982, we converted to Strathcona Mechanical Limited. Most of our work is high-rise towers, rec centers, hospitals, strictly institutional and commercial work mostly. what I want to talk to you today is the experience that we have in BIM. BIM, we're seeing a lot more on qualifications for larger projects all throughout Western Canada. We can see that it's becoming part of our culture. We've been really wanting to get involved. We haven't had any specific project that demanded BIM from us. So we've seen a little bit here, a little bit there. We've touched on it, but nothing full-fledged. The type of projects that we've seen it on, we've done a couple of P3 projects throughout Western Canada. We tried to incorporate BIM, but we found that the way we were constructing the project was a little bit design as you go, and we couldn't get the model up and running in time for us to actually use it to prefab or anything to benefit from us. Same with guaranteed maximum price projects, kind of that would work out very, very well if we were able to get it in advance enough that we would be awarded the project, time to model it, use it mainly for our mechanical rooms and more congested areas. In the example that we're going to show today was a hard bid number. That worked out very well for us, a hard bid number, because it was in the specifications and in the tender package that we had to carry a BIM portion for the project. So it also gave us the opportunity to allow a value to it that we can carry throughout the project. Like I mentioned before, most of the BIM that we've used on project have been just as a reference. We haven't had any detailed enough drawings that we were able to prefab from or anything to do mechanical rooms from, more just as a reference. In general, with the projects that we've been seeing, the pros that we've been seeing obviously are the interference checks. That is one of the big ones. Are we going to run into a post, a wall? Are we going to be in the way of an electrical contractor or other contractors in general? The other benefit that we obviously see with it is with the mechanical rooms that are so congested, if we are able to prefab some of those spools at our office or a little bit off-site and bring it to the mechanical rooms to fit together like a puzzle, it would save us a tremendous amount of time, and obviously saving time, it will save us money. Also, as discussions in our office too, we have seen BIM models that have the equipment and parts that are on the model where you can touch, and it would give informations. It would give the specifications, the drawings, the manuals of certain equipment that's on site. Come very handy when we're in a mechanical room and we are researching something and we can touch on a pump and it will give us the make, the dimensions, the flow rates, and information like that. Cons that we've seen. Some of the projects we've seen, one of the big ones that we've seen a few times just because of the team not being fluent in modeling, is that the model is not done on time for the project. So we end up constructing the project and then they end up modeling for what we did. There's a huge benefit of modeling that is not being utilized here. Following us, yes, the owner will get the 3D model at the end, he can use it for maintenance and everything, but a lot of the modeling benefit of prefabbing and saving time and everything is completely lost if they're just following construction. Another thing that we've been seeing a lot is the scope and responsibility confusion. When there's a clash, we're running pipe and electricals in our way, or vice versa. Who's going to make that change? Who wants to move? Who's going to pay for the model to be changed? That's a big misconception a lot of times when talking to other mechanical contractors and other contractors that are involved. How did we do it before? We worked it out on site. Now we're kind of working it out on front of a computer, which is nice to see as long as there's a format on how BIM is controlled, as long as there is a central area of who's going to be the master if there's a disagreement of who's going to take control. The other type too is we're learning that there's a lot of different type of models that you can do, from basic to ones that we can actually prefab to. That has to be identified at the beginning. A lot of times we're bidding a project and say, yeah, it's going to be modeled. That's great. We were expecting to see a model. We're going to prefab from it, but the model's not in that detail. Those details need to be explained to us. They need to be explained to the entire team. What is everybody's responsibility? Are we bringing this up to what we want, or are we providing the information on equipment and materials so the consultants can bring us up to that level of detail? To use an example, as Reed mentioned, we're doing a high-rise tower currently in Edmonton. This was a hard bid number. The one benefit, we've been waiting for a project that we could go completely embrace the BIM model. We want to test it out. We want to see what savings there are and the complications there are. This project ended up working out perfect. There is no deliverable to the owner. The strict model was for the benefit of the construction team to speed up this project. So at the end of the day, this worked out perfect, because now if something's not going right, or we can move on, we can scrap what we're doing, move on, because we didn't have to give anything for an end product. This was strictly for our benefit. As a business decision, now that we decided to take on this project, we took some courses. We have a little bit of knowledge of doing modeling in our office, but we realized that there is a time restraint on this. So what we did is we hired a third-party consultant. As a business, we thought this would be the best way. They have the expertise. It would help us speed up our learning curve a lot by learning the processes and how they deal with the project. And we were using this as a learning tool as well as to speed up the project. Why the third party? Like I mentioned, the consultants that we hired, they have a team. They can sit there and do it way faster than in-house. Obviously, a couple of us in the office, we can do it, but we can't do it that fast for an entire mechanical room. It would take us months. We needed things done in weeks, and decisions made that changes need to be done in a day or two, not a week, to figure out how to use the programming stuff. Another one was, we've never done a full-fledged model. We're not aware of the roadblocks we're going to hit. So hiring a third-party consultant almost gave up the liability. Now it's their responsibility. They are responsible for meeting the spec. They're responsible for giving us what we need to prefab. We put the ownership on them. Things that we wanted to learn from the experience. What is the savings? Everybody says, or a lot of people say, that there's a big savings 3D modeling. Well, 3D modeling has quite a large cost. Figuring out that savings, that's what we want to know. Yes, you can prefab at the office, but the work still needs to be done. So you're still working it. How much time is that actually saving doing it from the office or not on site? Obviously, there'd be a lot of savings with material that was mentioned, time that was saving, but how much of time? How much of material? Obviously, this is going to take a few experiences and a few projects to learn. Is it worth it at the end? Does it make up the cost that we're paying to have the third-party consultants perform the model for us? All these answers we needed to know. If it's that much of a savings, maybe we want to model every project, even if it's required or not. If it's going to save our company money, that's what we want to accomplish. Some roadblocks that we're learning from the third-party consultant that we hired. One of the major roadblocks that we've seen is the experience of the modelers didn't have experience in our trade. They weren't plumbers or pipe fitters. They were given the drawings, given what we wanted, and they made sure it fit in the mechanical room. They missed the practical use in the application. The pipes were on front of access doors. Pipes were in the way of us getting to valves that might need to be turned off. All those items that, if they were in our trade, they would automatically see when they were modeling, was missed when they modeled the project, and then there was a lot of redo just to get the practicality of our trade. The one thing we did experience was the speed. Obviously, it's much faster in-house. Even if we, as a business decision, we debated about hiring somebody to model in-house, but a one-man modeler still couldn't keep up with the team of modeling from our consulting firm that we hired. The upfront work to the end result. In a way, we got a little bit lucky with the project that we're on. There's a 4th floor mechanical room and a penthouse mechanical room. We are realizing all the upfront work that it takes to model the building. Picking out the valves, the equipment, rerouting piping, everything, that takes a lot of manpower and a lot of decision-making up front. What we found in this one, we actually have the model on time for the 4th floor mechanical, but it was just in time. We never got to utilize the prefabbing portion that we wanted. The benefit of this project is there is a penthouse mechanical, so everything that we learned as a company and from dealing with consultants, now that we've learned that by the time we hit the mechanical penthouse suite, we're going to be ready to go. Everything should fly smoothly, and it should benefit every single person on the project. The BIM team. Our experience with the BIM team in general, at the beginning there was a little bit of confusion. Who was responsible for what portion, who's going to pay for changes. Right now, the clash detections that are done on the project are done by each contractor is responsible for their own. We have our consultant that deals with it. If we're in the way of another contractor, this is the benefit of having other contractors on a project that are actually willing to use the model. We work together, we work it out. In case it doesn't work out, the consultant does have the final say, but 95% of the time, we work with the other contractors and we figure it out together. And it just gets sorted out that way. The general contractor on this project, they are doing all the design changes. So we change our model, other trades change their model, it gets uploaded by the general contractor, they actually compile all the information and send it to us, and we work from that. That worked out well. There was a little bit of confusion at the beginning, but the top-down approach seems to be working. We need somebody responsible at the top levels to manage the model to make sure that everything flows more smoothly. Experience with the project in the field. Right now, because of the model being done for the penthouse mechanical, we are prefabbing a lot at our office. Obviously, the cost benefit, it seems like it's there. We won't find out until obviously the end of the project. But we're prefabbing, we have a yard to lay up all the pipe. We have every floor laid out that we can start just loading all the pipe and material floor by floor when we get to those levels. Actually, on paper, we're figuring that we'll probably go through about a floor a week. And because of the 3D modeling and us prepping for it, we should be able to easily accomplish a floor a week on a 27-story tower. Our guys on site all have iPads and tablets, and they have been all positive feedback. They can walk into a room, look it up on their iPad, they know exactly what they're installing, where they're going, what material they need, and it's getting the coordination, which is really big. The coordination seems to be running a lot more smoothly that way. Our future hopes. A lot of things that we've been seeing, because we are all for the modeling system. A lot of projects that we're seeing is the tender documents. It goes right to the tender documents. We need the models at an acceptable level. We need the models explained to us. The execution plan, which we've seen, is just copied. Here's this company's execution plan. It just gets handed out to every project. Those need to be site specific. Each site has its own characteristics that an execution plan and the way the contracting is with the contractors is slightly different in everyone. That execution plan, we would think that if it was site specific, it might be a little bit more helpful. Which would help all trades altogether. Like I said, the top-down approach, which we are starting to do on the current project, seems to be the best approach. It needs to be coordinated from a top level. How is Strathcona Mechanical going to move forward with this? Obviously, from what we're learning, it's a big learning curve. We want to use this on many more projects. Looking at the cost and the manpower it takes in Western Canada, all the projects are rushed. They're fast. We need these things done. We will never have probably a modeling team internally for a long time that's able to accomplish detailed models enough in a fast period of time. So the way we're looking at it internally as a business decision, we will probably use a third-party consultant, do the majority of the modeling work. Internally, we want to put all of our project managers, estimators in courses. They want to learn BIM. We want to teach them how to model, and then if there's a change on the way, we don't have to always outsource it. We can do small changes in-house, but the majority of the work could be third party. Thank you.
Okay, so we are 42, oh wait, there's the countdown here. Anyway, so the point is, I want to point out one quick last little thing. I think it's really good perspectives that we're seeing here from industry. Is this the right way to approach BIM? I don't think so. But I think we need to start somewhere. Trades need to get involved. They need to be able to understand the process and need to move forward. So in the end, I really just want everybody kind of to work together a little bit more, and as the trades get more appreciative to the hard work that the engineers and consultants are doing, and we start working as a team, it will come together. It's just a bit of a baby step along the way. So I appreciate everybody taking the time to listen to us to talk here, and thank you very much.